You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And these two players that we're about to talk about could potentially make or break the secondary, because if you think about it, if these guys could be really good for Syracuse, then that's one of the ways that Syracuse could have a strong secondary in 2025, because at minimum, they can outperform the starters, at least giving the starting or making the starting unit better, if you know what I mean, right? They just overtake the starting spots. They become really good. And then, hey, Syracuse's secondary, at least at the top end, is fine. Or Syracuse's starters play really well, and then you have a lot more depth because these players also can step in, and whenever someone needs a break or someone gets hurt, these guys can fill the void. So who are the two sleepers, under the radar guys for Syracuse this upcoming season? Number one, again, we've talked about him a lot here on this podcast, so I'm not sure if he's that much of a sleeper here, okay? But Chris Peel, the Georgia cornerback transfer from this offseason. Again, it's not the first time that I've mentioned him, but to me, he almost seems like he could be a slightly younger version of what Syracuse had last year with Clarence Lewis. When Syracuse got Clarence Lewis in the transfer portal from Notre Dame a season ago, I'll be honest with you, I thought they were bringing some veteran experience, a good locker room guy, a hard worker. I didn't know if he was really going to be that effective, though, for Syracuse football. I thought he would be more of a depth corner for the team. Well, it turns out I myself was very wrong, and I was pleasantly surprised about Clarence Lewis. I own it that I was wrong. I'm not perfect. I don't bat 1,000 here on this podcast. I'll just be honest. Sorry. This is your first time watching or listening. Jackson Holzer does not bat 1,000. Okay, so Clarence Lewis outperforms my expectations for him last season. He ends up becoming second team All ACC, which I could not believe. Second team All ACC. Wow, he was really good. And he was an undrafted free agent signing, I believe, by the Tennessee Titans. So he's going to be teammates with Cam Ward in 2025. Now, unfortunately, that was Clarence Lewis's final season of college eligibility. So now, relating it back to Chris Peel, who's got multiple years of eligibility, he's coming from Georgia. He couldn't really carve out much of a role at Georgia, but he was a four-star recruit in 2023, primarily recruited by Fran Brown. Again, for those that may have forgotten, Fran Brown's background is with defensive backs, and he was the defensive backs coach over at Georgia before coming to Syracuse in 2024. And he was also the number one recruiter in the nation, so I'm not surprised that he was the primary recruiter for a four-star defensive back in 2023 and a guy like Chris Peel. In fact, I mentioned this before, how he doesn't really seem like much of a sleeper anymore because of the amount we're talking about him. That I want to shout out subscriber Nick here, who texted me yesterday that he believes that Chris Peel is an honorable mention for the top 10 list of Syracuse football players in 2025. And I'll just tell you right now, Nick, if Chris Peel performs to a level where he's one of the 10 best players or close to one of the 10 best players for Syracuse football in 2025, I think that means the secondary is going to be really good. So hopefully he can live up to your expectation. And I won't be mad at it. I'm a Syracuse fan. I'm a Syracuse alum. So that's Chris Peel. That's one sleeper for you. The next one, we really haven't talked about this guy a lot at all. Maybe once when we did the recruiting podcast for him. Caleb Singleton, true freshman corner, Rivals four-star recruit, top 35 to 40 corner in the country. I think some sites have him as a top 60-ish corner in the country heading into this upcoming season from high school. We know that head coach Fran Brown is not afraid to play true freshmen. He doesn't care. If you're a senior, if you're a sophomore, he does not care. He's going to play the player or players that give him the best chance to win. And we saw this last season. Davien Kerr was a true freshman. He started the Final Four games. Murad Watson was a huge part of Syracuse's defensive line a year ago. He was a true freshman. Veteran players could have taken those spots, but Fran Brown gave it to those guys. So he is not afraid to play true freshmen. And the same thing in 2025 with Demetres Samuel Jr. It looks like he's going to be the team's number one corner. So he's not afraid to play true freshmen. I believe that Caleb Singleton will start at least one game for Syracuse in 2025. I just have a feeling that's going to happen. If he does, it'll probably occur later on in the season. I don't know exactly where he is on the depth chart right now, but I do believe at some point he is going to start because, again, this is a talented secondary, but also a very young secondary. What if Demetres Samuel underperforms? What if Davien Kerr underperforms? What if Chris Peel doesn't exactly live up to his 4-star pedigree in 2023? What if some of the veterans, like a Greg Delane, doesn't take another step forward in development? What if Ivan McDaniels? What if someone gets hurt? There are so many what ifs with the secondary that you can look at a lot of players and say, hey, that guy might have a chance to start at some point. So when I look at Caleb Singleton, given his talent out of high school, I do think it's a possibility that he does start at least one game for Syracuse in 2025, probably later on in the season.